The little girl's hand moved across the paper, and Dante Marchetti watched something impossible happen. A smile. Curved lines forming something he hadn't seen directed at him in 20 years. Not from an adult. Certainly not from a child. And especially not from a child who, according to the terrified woman who'd just burst through his restaurant's private door, didn't draw smiles for anyone. Not even for the people she loved. But she'd drawn one for him. In a world where connection is the rarest currency, where understanding lives behind walls we build to survive. Sometimes two souls recognize each other across impossible distances. Sometimes the quietest person in the room is the only one who truly sees. And sometimes the most dangerous man in the city is the safest place a frightened child has ever known. Welcome to Forgotten Files, where broken people find each other in the spaces between words, where silence speaks louder than violence, and where love grows in the smallest gestures. If you believe that understanding is worth more than perfection, hit that subscribe button and like this video. Drop a comment telling us where you're watching from. We read every single one. Now, let's go back to the moment when everything changed. Back to a Wednesday afternoon in Queens, when a little girl ran from overwhelming noise into the arms of the quietest storm in New York. The New York Aquarium was supposed to be therapeutic. That's what the occupational therapist had said. Controlled environment, dim lighting, calming blue tones. Perfect for children with sensory processing challenges. Isabella Moreno had wanted to believe it. God, how she'd wanted to believe it. She stood now in the jellyfish exhibit, counting heads for the 4th time in 3 minutes. 18 kindergartners from PS 112, 18 bright faces reflecting the ethereal glow of moon jellies drifting in their massive tank. 17 faces she could see clearly. 1 missing. Emma? Her voice stayed calm through years of practice, but her heart was already racing. Emma, baby, where are you? The other teacher, Mrs. Chen, noticed immediately. When did you last see her? 30 seconds ago. She was right. Isabella pointed to the bench where Emma had been sitting, rocking gently, her worn, stuffed bunny clutched to her chest. The bunny was still there. Emma wasn't. Emma never left Whisper behind. Isabella's blood turned to ice. I'll watch the group, Mrs. Chen said, already moving. Go. Isabella ran. The aquarium's soundscape changed as she moved through exhibits. Gentle music in the jellyfish room gave way to the louder penguin area, where children shrieked with delight and birds squawked. Her mind was already calculating. Too loud for Emma. She wouldn't have gone there. The touch pools? Too many people. The cafeteria? Too many smells. Outside. Emma would have gone outside, searching for quiet. Isabella burst through the side exit, scanning the street. Late October in Sawin, Brooklyn, cold wind off the ocean. Emma was wearing a soft purple dress and a thin cardigan. No coat because she couldn't stand the feeling of zippers against her skin. Emma! Isabella's voice cracked. A few passers-by turned, then kept walking. New York didn't stop for panic. Emma, please! She ran left, then right, her breath coming in sharp gasps. 3 blocks. 4. Emma couldn't have gone far, but she could move fast when she was scared, when the world became too much. There, a flash of purple disappearing through a door. Isabella sprinted across the street, barely registering the angry honk of a taxi. The door was heavy, dark wood, with no windows. No sign, just an address in brass numbers, 1247. She grabbed the handle and pulled. The first thing Dante noticed was the silence shattering. He'd been mid-sentence, explaining to Victor Castellano exactly why their arrangement with the Borellis needed restructuring, when the door to the private dining room crashed open. Not the door, his men guarded. The side entrance, the one that led from the kitchen, the one that should have been locked. A child stood in the doorway. Small, maybe 5 years old. Light brown hair falling in waves around a face gone paper white with terror. She wore a purple dress and had her hands clamped over her ears, eyes squeezed shut, mouth open in a silent scream. Every man in the room turned. 8 members of the Marchetti family. 8 dangerous men in expensive suits, several with guns visible in shoulder holsters. The kind of men who didn't react well to interruptions, especially not during business. "What the—" Victor started, his voice sharp. The child's eyes snapped open. The overhead chandelier's light hit her directly, and Dante watched her face contort with pain. She dropped to her knees, hands pressing harder against her ears, and began rocking, back and forth, back and forth. Dante knew that movement, knew it in his bones, in the deepest part of himself he'd spent 40 years hiding. "Lights," he said. His voice cut through the room like a blade. "Kill them. Now." "Dante, we're in the middle of—" "Now." Marco, closest to the wall switch, hesitated only a second before plunging the room into dimness. Only the candles on the table remained, casting soft, flickering shadows. Everyone stopped talking. Dante's voice dropped to barely above a whisper. "Don't move. Don't speak. Be quiet." 8 men fell silent. Outside these walls, they answered to no one. Inside this room, they answered to Dante Marchetti, consigliere of the Marchetti family, the man whose counsel had kept them alive and powerful for 15 years, the man whose word was law. Dante stood slowly, telegraphing every movement. He'd learned long ago that sudden motion could be violence to certain nervous systems. He moved around the table, keeping his footsteps soft against the hardwood floor. The child was still rocking, but slower now. Her breathing came in sharp, panicked gasps, too fast, heading toward hyperventilation. Dante stopped 6 feet away, far enough not to crowd, close enough to help if she needed it. He knelt down, bringing himself to her eye level. Waited. After 30 seconds, she opened her eyes. They were hazel, huge in her small face, darting around the room without settling on anything specific, avoiding direct eye contact. Another thing he recognized. Too loud? His voice was barely a murmur. The child's rocking slowed. She stared at a point just past his left shoulder. A tiny nod. "It's quiet now," Dante said. "Dark. Better?" Another nod. Slower breathing. He didn't reach for her, didn't smile or make exaggerated expressions. He simply stayed still, present, letting her nervous system recalibrate. Behind him, he could feel the confusion radiating from his men. They'd seen Dante negotiate million-dollar deals without blinking. They'd seen him order executions with cold efficiency. They'd never seen him kneel on a floor for a terrified child. Footsteps pounded outside. The main door burst open, and a woman stumbled through, wild-eyed and gasping. "Emma!" She saw the child and nearly collapsed with relief. "Oh God, Emma, baby!" Dante held up one hand, still not looking away from the child. The woman froze. "You're her mother," he said quietly. "Her aunt. I'm her aunt. I teach at—" "We were on a field trip, and she ran, and I—" The woman's voice broke. "I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. We'll leave right now. Emma, come on, sweetie." "Don't." Dante kept his voice gentle but firm. "She's calming down. Let her finish." The woman, young, maybe late 20s, with dark brown hair pulled back in a messy ponytail and eyes full of exhausted worry, stared at him. He could see her mind working, taking in the private dining room, the men in expensive suits, the tension in the air that spoke of interrupted business. Understanding dawned in her eyes. Fear followed quickly after, but she stayed quiet. She understood what he was asking. The child, Emma, had stopped rocking entirely. She sat on the floor, hands still over her ears but no longer pressing so hard. Her gaze drifted slowly around the dim room, cataloging details. Candles, dark wood. Men sitting perfectly still. Then her eyes landed on Dante. For the first time, she looked directly at him. 3 seconds. 5. Long enough that he felt the weight of it, the rarity. She slowly lowered her hands from her ears. Dante stayed motionless, barely breathing. Emma reached into her dress pocket and pulled out a small notepad, the kind with lined paper and a stubby purple crayon. Her movements were deliberate, careful. She opened to a blank page, drew something, held it up for him to see. A smile. Simple curved lines, the kind a child draws. A semicircle of joy rendered in waxy purple. Dante felt something crack open in his chest, something that had been frozen solid for longer than he could remember. The woman, the aunt, made a sound. Half sob, half gasp. When Dante glanced at her, tears were streaming down her face. "She doesn't do that," the woman whispered. "She's never done that. Not for strangers. Not for teachers or therapists, or anyone except me." Emma tucked the notepad back in her pocket, grabbed her bunny. Dante noticed it for the first time, worn and faded, and stood up. She walked past him, not close, but not avoiding him either, and went to her aunt. The woman scooped her up immediately, holding her tight, pressing her face into the child's hair. "Thank you," she breathed, looking at Dante. "Thank you so much. I'm so sorry we interrupted. Don't apologize." Dante stood, brushing off his knees. He could feel his men watching, trying to understand what they'd just witnessed. "She needed quiet. We have quiet. We'll go. Right now. I'm sorry. What's your name?" The woman hesitated. Isabella Moreno." "I'm Dante." He didn't offer his last name. Not yet. "Does this happen often? Her running?" Isabella's arms tightened around Emma. "When she's overwhelmed. She has autism, sensory processing disorder. The aquarium was supposed to be calm, but..." Her voice cracked. It was still too much. Dante nodded slowly. She found the quietest place nearby. "Your private dinner. I'm so sorry. Stop apologizing." He said it gently, but it was still a command. Isabella fell silent. She did what she needed to do. She's safe. That's what matters. Behind him, Victor cleared his throat softly. A reminder. They still had business to conduct. Business. That couldn't wait. But Dante was looking at the child in Isabella's arms, at the stuffed bunny, at the aunt whose eyes were shadowed with exhaustion that spoke of countless sleepless nights, at the purple crayon smile that was already fading from his mind, but would never really leave. "There's a car outside," he said. "I'll have my driver take you back to your school. Safer than walking." "We can't. You can." He pulled a business card from his pocket, held it out. "If she ever needs quiet, again, call this number." Isabella stared at the card like it might bite her, but she took it, tucked it carefully into her cardigan pocket. "Thank you," she whispered. Dante watched them leave, the door closing softly behind them. Watched through the window as Marco guided them to the car, opened the door, helped them inside. When he turned back to the table, 8 pairs of eyes studied him with varying degrees of confusion. "Someone want to explain what the hell that was?" Victor asked. Dante sat down, straightened his tie, and picked up his water glass. His hand didn't shake. It never shook. Years of practice. "A child needed help," he said calmly. "We helped. Now, where were we? The Borelli situation." The meeting resumed. Business continued. the world kept turning. But in his jacket pocket, Dante's phone felt heavier than usual, weighted down by the knowledge that his personal card, the one only 5 people in the world had, was now in the possession of a teacher from Queens who'd just seen inside his world, and by the image of a purple crayon smile that wouldn't stop replaying behind his eyes. The subway car rattled through darkness, and Isabella held Emma closer, feeling the small body finally relaxing against her chest. It had taken 20 minutes of rocking, of humming the specific pattern Emma found soothing. 3 notes up, 2 notes down. Repeat. But her niece had finally stopped trembling. Mrs. Chen had been understanding. Of course she had. In 12 years of, teaching together, Chen had seen Emma's episodes before. Had covered for Isabella more times than she could count. The other children had already been loaded onto the school bus. Emma's backpack was collected. Everything handled. Isabella should have felt relieved. Instead, she felt hollowed out, scraped clean. The business card in her pocket felt like it weighed 10 pounds. She shouldn't have taken it. Should have thanked him. Dante, just Dante, no last name. And walked away. Should have forgotten the private dining room, the expensive suits, the way those men had gone silent at a single word from him. Should have forgotten the way he'd knelt on the floor for her niece without hesitation. The way he'd understood immediately what Emma needed. No questions. No judgment. Just quiet confidence and unexpected gentleness from a man who was clearly dangerous. She'd seen enough movies, read enough news. Private dining rooms with no signs. Men in suits with visible weapons. The way the driver, Marco, he'd introduced himself, had been unfailingly polite, but had checked the street 3 times before letting them into the car. Dante was connected. Had to be. Mafia, probably. Or something close enough that the distinction didn't matter. And she'd taken his card. Emma shifted against her, small hand clutching Whisper tighter. The bunny had a new smudge of dirt on one ear from the restaurant floor. Isabella would wash it tonight, carefully, in the mesh bag that kept it from falling, apart in the machine. Emma didn't sleep without Whisper. Didn't eat breakfast without Whisper sitting in the chair beside her. Didn't do anything without... Isabella's phone buzzed. Text from her mother. How was the field trip? Isabella stared at the screen. How could she possibly answer that? Fine, Mom. Emma had a sensory meltdown and ran into a mafia meeting, but a really polite criminal helped us out. So it's all good. Good, she texted back. Emma did great. Liar. Their apartment was on the 4th floor of a walk-up in Astoria. No elevator. Isabella's legs burned by the time she reached their door, Emma's weight settling heavier with each step. 40 pounds shouldn't feel like 80, but exhaustion had a way of multiplying everything. Inside, the apartment was exactly as they'd left it that morning. Small, clean, organized within an inch of its life because structure was how Emma survived. Toys in labeled bins, visual schedule on the refrigerator, noise-canceling headphones charging on, the counter beside the weighted blanket. All the tools of their survival. Isabella set Emma down gently. Bath time, baby. Then dinner. Emma nodded and headed straight to the bathroom. She knew the routine. Wednesday meant chicken nuggets and cucumber slices cut into circles. Not stars. Not sticks. Circles. They'd tried stars once. Emma hadn't eaten for 2 days. While Emma played in the bath, exactly 15 minutes timed on Isabella's phone, she started dinner and tried not to think about the, business card burning a hole in her pocket. Failed miserably. She pulled it out. Heavy cardstock, cream-colored. No company name. Just a phone number embossed in black. And below it, a single letter. MM for what? Marchetti? Maybe. She could Google it. Could try to figure out who Dante actually was. What he did. whether taking his card had been the stupidest decision of her life, or she could throw it away. Forget this afternoon ever happened. Go back to their careful, structured existence, where the most dangerous thing in her world was running out of the specific brand of crackers Emma would actually eat. Isabella set the card on the counter and started cutting cucumbers. Emma drew the man again before bed. She did it while Isabella read their nightly story, The Very Quiet Cricket, Emma's favorite, and when Isabella glanced down at the notepad, her breath caught. Not a smile this time. A person. Stick figure, the way 5-year-olds drew, but details that Emma never included. A suit, rendered in careful purple lines, short hair, and beside him, something that might have been a table with candles. Is that from today? Isabella asked softly. From the restaurant? Emma nodded. Her finger traced the stick figure's outline. He was nice, Isabella said, testing the words. Wasn't he? The quiet man. Another nod. Emma flipped the page and drew again. This time, 3 figures. 2 tall, 1 small. The small one in the middle, holding something. Whisper, Isabella realized. The bunny. Her throat tightened. Is that us? She whispered. You, me, and the quiet man? Emma set down the crayon and climbed under her covers, tucking Whisper beside her on the pillow. She didn't answer. She rarely did these days. The speech therapist said it was selective mutism layered on top of the autism. Trauma response from finding her mother, Isabella's sister Carmen, unconscious on the bathroom floor 18 months ago. From watching the paramedics work. From understanding, in whatever way a 4-year-old could understand, that Mommy wasn't waking up. Isabella kissed Emma's forehead, turned on the nightlight that projected stars across the ceiling, and left the door cracked exactly 3 inches. Not 2. Not 4. 3. In the kitchen, she stood at the sink and stared at the business card. Her phone buzzed. Another text from her mother. Did you talk to the lawyer yet? About David? Isabella's stomach clenched. David, Emma's biological father. The man Carmen had run from when Emma was 2. The man who'd contributed nothing but genetic material and trauma. The man whose lawyer had sent papers last week claiming he wanted to be involved in his daughter's life. Translation. David had figured out that Emma received SSI benefits, disability checks, money, and he wanted his cut. Isabella had an appointment with a family lawyer next Wednesday, pro bono, because she couldn't afford anything else on a teacher's salary. The lawyer had already warned her that biological parents had rights, that unless she could prove David was dangerous, not just absent, but actively dangerous, he might win visitation, might win custody. The thought made her physically ill. She picked up the business card, turned it over in her fingers. If she ever needs quiet again, call this number. That's what he'd said. Dante, the quiet man with dark eyes who'd knelt on the floor for a stranger's child, who'd understood without explanation, who'd made 8 dangerous-looking men go silent with a single word. What would a man like that do if he knew Emma was in danger of being handed over to a deadbeat father who saw her as a paycheck? Isabella shoved the card back in her pocket. Stupid thought. Dangerous thought. She wasn't that desperate yet. Not yet. By Friday, Emma had drawn the quiet man 7 times. Isabella tried not to worry about it, tried to see it as progress. Emma connecting with someone new, processing a positive experience through her art. The therapist would probably say it was healthy. But on Saturday morning, when Isabella took Emma to their usual spot in Astoria Park, she understood. Emma wasn't processing. She was hoping. They'd been at the playground for 20 minutes. Emma sitting on the grass, arranging fallen leaves in careful patterns. Isabella on the bench grading papers. When Emma suddenly stood up, grabbed Whisper, walked toward the park entrance. Emma, baby, where are you going? Emma didn't answer, just kept walking, her steps purposeful, determined. Isabella scrambled to follow, papers forgotten. "Emma, stop. We need to stay where I can see you." But Emma had already left the playground, was heading down the path that led to the park's main entrance. And there, standing beside a black car that probably cost more than Isabella made in 2 years, checking his phone. Dante. Isabella's heart stopped. Coincidence? Had to be. New York was big, but neighborhoods were small. Maybe he lived nearby. Maybe he was meeting someone. Maybe... Emma walked right, up to him. Dante looked up from his phone. His expression didn't change, still that controlled, unreadable mask. But something shifted in his eyes. Recognition. And beneath it, something that might have been pleasure. "Hello," he said quietly. "It's Emma, right?" Emma nodded, held up Whisper for him to see. "This is Whisper," Isabella said, arriving breathless and mortified. "Her bunny. She wanted to show you. I'm sorry, she doesn't usually approach people. Ever. I don't know why. She feels safe." Dante's gaze moved to Isabella, and she felt the weight of it. Children know who's safe. He was dressed differently today. Still expensive. Dark jeans, black sweater, leather jacket, but softer. More human. His dark brown hair was slightly mussed, like he'd been running his hand through it. And without the backdrop of that formal dining room, with morning light hitting his face, Isabella could see details she'd missed before. The tiny scar above his left eyebrow. The way he held himself with absolute stillness, like movement was something he had to consciously choose. The intelligence in his dark eyes that suggested he saw everything, missed nothing. He knelt down, same as he'd done Wednesday, bringing himself to Emma's level. "Did you draw more pictures?" he asked. Emma nodded enthusiastically, pulled out her ever-present notepad and flipped through pages. All the drawings of him, stick figures in suits, tables with candles, one of him kneeling, another figure small, beside him. Dante studied each one seriously, like they were fine art instead of crayon scribbles. "These are very good," he said. "You remember details." Emma beamed. It was the closest thing to a smile Isabella had seen on her face in weeks. "We should go," Isabella said awkwardly. "Let you get back to whatever you were doing." "Walking." Dante stood, sliding his hands into his jacket pockets. "I walk on Saturdays. This park is quiet." Quiet. The word hung between them, heavy with meaning. "You live nearby?" The question slipped out before Isabella could stop it. "Close enough." He didn't elaborate. "And you?" "Astoria. About 6 blocks that way." She pointed, then immediately regretted giving him even that much information. "Emma likes this park, the big field, space to arrange things." Dante's gaze moved to where Emma had been sitting, to the careful pattern of leaves still visible on the grass. "She organizes," he observed, "creates order. It helps her process. The therapist says—" Isabella stopped. Why was she explaining Emma's therapy to a stranger? A dangerous stranger who might be mob-connected. "Sorry, you don't need to hear about—" "I want to hear." Dante's voice was quiet but absolute. "Tell me." And somehow, standing in morning sunlight while Emma arranged pebbles at their feet, Isabella found herself talking. About the autism diagnosis, the sensory processing disorder, the selective mutism that had appeared after Carmen died, the careful routines they'd built to help Emma navigate a world that was too loud, too bright, too overwhelming. Dante listened without interrupting, without the usual expressions of pity or discomfort people showed when she explained Emma's challenges. He just listened. When she finished, he was quiet for a long moment. Then, I wasn't diagnosed until I was 32. Isabella blinked. Diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder. High functioning, they said, though I hate that term. I'm not functioning better than anyone. I just learned to hide it well. He paused. The sensory issues. The need for routine. The way people's faces are. Difficult to read. I thought everyone experienced the world that way. Thought I was just better at controlling it. Isabella stared at him. You're autistic? Surprised? She didn't know what she was. You seem so cold, controlled, like I don't feel anything. A slight curve touched his mouth, not quite a smile. That's masking. I spent 40 years building that mask. It's very good, but it's also exhausting. Emma tugged on Isabella's sleeve, pointed to Dante, then to the grass where her leaf pattern waited. She wants you to see, Isabella translated. Her arrangements. She's showing you. May I? Dante asked Isabella. She nodded, too stunned to do anything else. Dante followed Emma to the grass, moving with that same careful deliberateness. He sat down, expensive jeans on damp grass without hesitation, and watched while Emma showed him her leaf patterns. Explained, in her wordless way, how they were organized, by size, by color, by the number of points. And Dante understood. Isabella could see it in the way he nodded, in how he pointed to specific leaves and waited for Emma's confirmation before touching them. In the way he didn't try to reorganize or fix anything, just observed and appreciated the order Emma had created. This wasn't an act. This was real recognition. One neurodivergent mind seeing another. How did you figure it out? Isabella asked, quietly, sitting down beside them. That you were autistic? I watched a documentary about autism in adults, and every symptom they described, I thought, that's just normal. Everyone does that. He glanced at her. Except they don't. Most people don't need 3 hours of silence after social interaction. Most people don't have specific textures they can't tolerate. Most people can look at faces and understand the emotions automatically. But you manage, Isabella said. Your work. Whatever. You do. You're clearly successful. I manage because I don't have a choice. Because I learned the patterns early. How to read people through behavior instead of expression. How to use silence as a tool instead of a limitation. He picked up a red leaf, turned it in his fingers. But it costs. Every interaction, every meeting, every moment in the neurotypical world. It costs. Emma added the red leaf to her pattern, placed it perfectly. Does Emma talk? Dante asked. Or is it always... He gestured to the notepad. She used to. Before... Isabella's throat tightened. Before my sister died. Carmen, Emma's mom, she found her, after the overdose, and something just stopped. The words stopped. Trauma, Dante said softly. The nervous system's way of protecting itself, shutting down non-essential functions. The therapist says the same thing, that Emma will talk again when she feels safe enough. Isabella watched her niece arrange another leaf. I'm trying to make her feel safe, but I don't know if I'm enough. Dante looked at her fully then, and the intensity in his dark eyes nearly made her look away. Nearly. You're carrying a 5-year-old child with complex needs, working full-time, grieving your sister, and Emma isn't in the system, isn't in foster care. She's with you, in a home with routines and structure and love. His voice was quiet but fierce. You're not just enough. You're extraordinary. Tears burned Isabella's eyes. She blinked them back. You don't know anything about me. I know you ran through half of Brooklyn looking for her. I know you understood immediately that she needed quiet and let me help, even though you were terrified. I know she drew a smile for me because you've taught her that kindness exists. He paused. That's enough to know. Emma made a small sound, not words, but close, and held up another drawing. This one showed 3 figures again. 2 tall, 1 small. But this time, they were all connected, holding hands. Isabella's breath caught. Dante studied the drawing for a long moment. When he looked up, something vulnerable flickered across his face before the mask settled back into place. I should let you get back to your Saturday, he said, standing smoothly. But if Emma wants to show me her arrangements again sometime, if you're here next week, I walk Saturdays around 10. It wasn't quite an invitation. More like a door left open, a choice offered. Isabella should have said no, should have thanked him, politely, and walked away. Should have protected herself and Emma from whatever world a man like Dante inhabited. But Emma was looking up at him with something like hope in her hazel eyes, and Isabella heard herself say, We're usually here by 9:30, if you wanted to walk earlier. Dante's expression didn't change, but his eyes did, something warm flickering in their depths. 9:30, he agreed. Next Saturday. He said goodbye to Emma, a small wave, nothing overwhelming, and walked back to his car. Isabella watched him go, her heart pounding, her mind screaming that this was a mistake. But Emma was already drawing again. Another smile. And this time, beside it, she drew 3 stick figures holding hands. The Saturdays became a pattern, then a routine. Then something Isabella stopped questioning and simply accepted as part of the fabric of their lives. 9:30 in Astoria Park. Emma with her notepad and whisper. Isabella with coffee in a travel mug and papers to grade. And Dante, arriving exactly on time in clothes that got progressively more casual, dark jeans and sweaters replacing suits, though the expensive watch never changed. He brought things, small things, a set of smooth river stones Emma could arrange by size, a book about deep-sea creatures with pictures so detailed. Emma spent an entire morning studying the bioluminescent jellyfish. Noise-canceling headphones in soft purple that fit Emma's small head perfectly. You didn't have to, Isabella protested, each time. I wanted to, Dante replied. And that was that. The 4th Saturday, Emma did something extraordinary. She took Dante's hand, just reached up, grabbed his fingers, and tugged him toward the big oak tree where she'd found a perfect acorn. Dante went still. Isabella watched his face, saw something crack in that careful mask, surprise and wonder, and something that looked almost like pain. He let Emma lead him, knelt beside her while she showed him the acorn's cap, how it fit perfectly on, top like a tiny hat. And when Emma placed the acorn in his palm, closed his fingers around it, Dante's hand trembled. Just once. Just barely. But Isabella saw it. She trusts you, Isabella said softly when Emma ran off to find more acorns. She doesn't trust easily. Neither do I. Dante pocketed the acorn like it was precious. But she makes it easier because she doesn't expect you to perform, Isabella realized. Doesn't need eye contact or small talk or any of the social things that are exhausting. She sees me without needing me to translate myself. He paused. The way I see her. They sat in comfortable silence while Emma hunted for acorns. The late November air bit cold, but the sun was bright. Isabella pulled her thin jacket tighter. You're cold. Not a question. Dante noticed everything. I'm fine. He shrugged out of his leather jacket, buttery soft, probably cost more than her monthly rent, and held it out. Take it. I can't. Isabella. He said her name quietly, but there was steel underneath. You're cold. I'm not. I run warm. Always have. Probably sensory processing. Temperature regulation issues. Take the jacket. She took it, slipped it on. It was enormous on her, warm from his body heat and smelling like expensive cologne, and something underneath that was just him. Cedar and coffee and clean cotton. "Thank you," she whispered. "You say thank you too much," Dante observed. "To me, to everyone. Like you're apologizing for existing." Isabella flinched. "I'm not. You are." He wasn't looking at her, was watching Emma instead. "You apologized 6 times on Wednesday. For Emma running, for interrupting, for existing in my space. You apologize for being cold, for Emma needing things, for taking up oxygen. That's not..." But her protest died, because he was right. God, he was right. "You don't owe the world apologies for surviving," Dante said quietly. "You're a single woman raising a special needs child on a teacher's salary. You're exhausted. You're scared. You're doing the impossible every single day, and you don't owe anyone, including me, an apology for any of it." Tears burned Isabella's throat. She swallowed them down. "How do you do that?" "Do what?" "See things, see people. You said you can't read expressions, but you read everything else." "I read patterns, behaviors, the way you hold your shoulders, up, tense, like you're bracing for impact, the way you count Emma constantly, even when she's right in front of you, the way you wear shoes with the sole worn through on the left side because you can't afford new ones yet." His voice stayed gentle, factual. "I read survival. I recognize it." "Because you survived something too," Isabella said. Not a question. Dante was quiet for a long time. Emma had moved to a different tree, was arranging acorns in careful rows on a flat stone. The park around them was mostly empty, too cold for the usual crowds. "My father," Dante finally said, "believed that autism was weakness. He didn't know that's what it was. This was 40 years ago, before diagnosis was common. But he knew I was different. Wrong. Defective." Isabella's hands curled into fists inside his jacket sleeves. "He tried to beat it out of me. The stimming, the need for routine, the meltdowns when things were too loud or too bright. He thought if he just disciplined me hard enough, I'd become normal." Dante's voice stayed level, clinical. "It didn't work. It just taught me to hide everything, to build a mask so good even I forgot what was underneath. Dante, I'm telling you this because you asked how I see survival. I see it because I'm still doing it. Every day, every interaction. The only difference is I'm 40 years old now, and no one can hurt me anymore. I made sure of that." The words hung heavy in the cold air. Made sure of that. Isabella understood what he meant, the power he'd accumulated, the dangerous world he inhabited, the way men fell silent when he spoke. "What do you do?" she asked. "Your work. You never said." "I'm a consigliere, advisor. I counsel a family business on legal matters, investments, strategic decisions." All true. Also completely misleading. "What kind of family business?" Dante looked at her fully then. "The kind where sometimes people get hurt. Where violence is a tool, not an exception. Where the law is flexible and morality is complicated." He paused. "I won't lie to you, Isabella. You're smart enough to know what I am. What I do." Her throat was dry. "Mafia. That's a word. Not one we use. But yes." She should have grabbed Emma and run. Should have blocked his number. Changed their Saturday routine. Pretended these weeks had never happened. But she thought about how gentle he was with Emma. How he understood without judgment. How he knelt on floors and studied acorn caps and never, not once, made Emma feel like her differences were wrong. "Do you hurt children?" The question came out harsh. "In your work, do you?" "Never," The word was absolute. I have lines I don't cross. Children are one, women are another. Innocence, those are non-negotiable. But you hurt people who aren't innocent. Yes. Does that include killing them? Dante held her gaze. Sometimes. Isabella's stomach churned, but she didn't look away. Why are you telling me this? Because you deserve the truth. Because if we keep doing this, he gestured between them. These Saturdays, this friendship, whatever it's becoming, you need to know who I am. All of it. The parts that understand Emma, and the parts that are dangerous. His jaw tightened. And then you can decide if you want to keep bringing her here. If you want me in her life. In your life. Emma called out. Not words, but a sound of excitement. She'd found something, was waving them over. I need to think, Isabella said quietly. Take the time you need. Dante stood, moved toward Emma without waiting for Isabella's response. What did you find, Piccola? Emma showed him a perfect acorn, unblemished and whole. Dante examined it with the same serious attention he gave everything she showed him. And Isabella sat there in his jacket, warm for the first time in weeks, watching a killer kneel in the grass for her niece. Watching Emma smile. The decision should have been simple. Dangerous man plus vulnerable child equals stay away. Basic math. But Monday morning brought a letter from David's lawyer, and suddenly the math changed. Isabella read it 3 times in the school break room, her coffee going cold in her hand. You okay? Mrs. Chen asked, concerned. Fine. Isabella folded the letter, slid it back in the envelope. Just family stuff. David was petitioning for visitation, 2 weekends a month. His lawyer claimed he was clean and sober, employed, and eager to develop a relationship with his daughter. Translation. He'd figured out how to look good on paper long enough to get his hands on Emma's SSI check. The letter outlined his case. Biological father. Constitutional. Rights. No proof of abuse or neglect. The lawyer was confident they'd win at least partial custody. Isabella called her pro bono lawyer during lunch. Got voicemail. Left a message trying not to sound as panicked as she felt. By Wednesday, she still hadn't heard back. By Friday, she was checking her phone every 5 minutes. And when Saturday morning came, she was at the park by 9, pacing, Emma arranging leaves nearby. Dante arrived at 9:30 exactly. Took one look at Isabella's face and went still. What happened? She handed him the letter without a word. He read it. Once. Twice. His expression didn't change, but something darkened in his eyes. Something cold and predatory. David Reeves, he said quietly, reading the name. Emma's biological father. He abandoned us when she was 2. Carmen, my sister. She ran from him. He was using, dealing, and Carmen was trying to get clean. She took Emma and left. Isabella's voice shook. He's been gone for 3 years. 3 years. And now he wants custody because Emma gets a disability check. Dante handed the letter back carefully. What did your lawyer say? Haven't heard back yet. Pro bono means I'm not a priority. She laughed bitterly. David has a real lawyer, expensive one. I don't know how he's affording it unless someone's funding it. Dante's voice was flat. Someone who sees an opportunity. Get custody of a disabled child, collect the benefits, use the money for other purposes. Isabella's blood ran, cold. You think he's working for someone? I think men like David Reeves don't suddenly become responsible fathers. I think they become opportunities for people who exploit vulnerable systems. He paused. I can find out. I can make inquiries. And I can make this go away. The way he said it, make this go away, sent ice down Isabella's spine. How? She whispered. However, it needs to go away. She understood. Oh God, she understood exactly what he was offering. No. The word came out sharp. No. Not. Dante, I can't. Emma can't. If something happens to David, if he disappears or dies or... she'll know. Eventually she'll know. And I won't have her growing up with that. With blood on her hands. On my hands. He's threatening to take her from you. I know. Tears spilled over. I know, and I'm terrified. But I can't. There has to be another way. A legal way. Something that doesn't involve... She couldn't say it. Couldn't put words to what he was offering. Dante watched her cry with that same intense focus he brought to everything. Then, slowly, he nodded. Legal, he said. We'll do it legal. But Isabella, you need a better lawyer. Someone who can fight this hard. Someone who knows family court and can build a case. I can't afford. I can. Before she could protest, he held up a hand. Not a gift, not charity, a loan. Pay me back over time, whatever you can afford. But you need a weapon equal to his, and your pro bono lawyer isn't it. Isabella wanted to refuse, wanted to say she'd handle it herself. But Emma was arranging leaves behind them, humming tunelessly, unaware that her entire life hung in the balance. Why? Isabella asked. Why would you do this? You barely know us. Dante crouched down, bringing himself to her eye level the same way he did with Emma. Because Emma drew me a smile, because she took my hand, because in 40 years, no child has ever looked at me without fear until her. His voice went rough. Because I know what it's like to be seen as defective, to be hurt by people who are supposed to protect you. And I will be damned before I let that happen to her. Isabella looked into his dark eyes and saw the truth. This wasn't about money or power or obligation. This was personal. This was a man who'd survived hell, recognizing a child who needed protection from the same. Okay, she whispered. Okay. Help me find a lawyer. Dante pulled out his phone, made 2 calls. By Monday morning, Isabella had an appointment with one of the best family lawyers in New York. The retainer was paid. The case was building. And David Reeves had no idea what was coming. The lawyer's name was Rebecca Santos, and she was nothing like Isabella expected. 40-something, wearing a sharp gray suit and carrying a leather briefcase that screamed competence. She sat across from Isabella in a conference room that probably cost more per hour than Isabella made in a week, and listened while Isabella explained everything. Carmen's addiction, Emma's autism, David's abandonment. The 3 years of silence. The sudden petition for custody coinciding with Emma's SSI eligibility. Rebecca took notes on a yellow legal pad, her expression neutral, but her pen moving fast. Tell me about David, she said when Isabella finished. Everything you know. He was dealing when Carmen met him. Small time, but connected to someone bigger. Carmen thought she could save him. Isabella's laugh was bitter. She couldn't even save herself. Did he ever hurt Emma, physically? Not that I saw, but Carmen said he scared her. Emma would cry when he raised his voice, would hide when he came home. She was only 2, but she knew to be afraid. Rebecca's pen moved faster. Any documentation? Hospital visits? Police reports? No. Carmen was too scared to report anything, and by the time she left him, she was using again. Wouldn't have been credible. What about after? After Emma came to you? Isabella shook her head. He never tried to contact us. Never sent money or asked how she was. 3 years of complete silence until this petition. Which is good for us, Rebecca said. Abandonment. We can argue he relinquished his parental rights through his actions even if not legally. She flipped pages. But we need more. We need to prove he's unfit. That giving him custody would harm Emma. that his motivation is financial, not paternal. How do we prove that? Rebecca smiled. It wasn't warm. We investigate financial records, associates, employment, history, drug tests, home visits. We build a case so airtight that no judge would consider giving him custody. She paused. It won't be cheap, and it won't be fast. How long? 3 months minimum. Maybe 6. Family court moves slowly. 6 months. 6 months of knowing David could show up at any time demanding to see Emma. 6 months of legal limbo. Isabella's stomach churned. And if we lose? We won't lose. Rebecca's voice was absolute. Mr. Marchetti made it very clear that failure isn't acceptable. And I don't fail. Mr. Marchetti. Dante. The man paying for this. The man who'd made this possible. The man she was letting into their lives despite knowing exactly what he was. Emma had a meltdown on Tuesday. Bad one. Triggered by unexpected fire alarm during quiet time at school. The sound was too loud, too sharp, too sudden. By the time Isabella reached her classroom, Emma was under the table, hands over her ears, rocking violently. It took 30 minutes to calm her down. Another hour before she'd let Isabella carry her to the car. She didn't speak, didn't even sign, for the rest of the day. That night, Isabella sat on the bathroom floor while Emma soaked in the tub and allowed herself to break down. Quiet tears at first, then sobs she muffled in her hands so Emma wouldn't hear. She was so tired, so scared, so overwhelmed. Her phone buzzed. Text from Dante. How is she? Isabella stared at the screen. She hadn't told him about the fire alarm. Hadn't texted him at all since Monday's meeting with Rebecca. How did you know? Emma's school sent an email about the fire drill. I'm on her emergency contact list. You added me last week. She had filled out the form without thinking, adding Dante's information below her own. The school had needed 3 contacts minimum. She'd only had 1. She's in the bath, not talking, won't make eye contact. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Can I come over? Isabella's breath caught. Come over. To their tiny apartment. Their personal space. The place she and Emma had built carefully, where every routine was sacred. She should say no. Should maintain boundaries. Should keep him at arm's length. Please, she typed instead. He arrived 40 minutes later carrying a bag from a Thai restaurant and a weighted blanket in soft purple. You didn't have to. Don't. Dante stepped inside, took in the small apartment with a single sweeping glance. Where is she? Still in the bath. She's been in there almost 2 hours. That's okay. Water is regulating. Let her stay as long as she needs. He set the bag on the kitchen counter. Have you eaten? I'm not hungry. That wasn't the question. He started unpacking containers. Pad Thai, spring rolls, tom kha gai. You need to eat. Can't take care of her if you're running on empty. Isabella wanted to argue, wanted to say she was fine, she could handle it, she didn't need his help. But the smell of food hit her, and her stomach growled, and she realized she'd skipped lunch. Again. Thank you, she whispered. They ate in silence. Not awkward, comfortable. Dante didn't try to fill the space with platitudes or useless advice. He just existed. Steady. Present. When Emma finally emerged from the bathroom, wrapped in towels and shivering slightly, she stopped short at seeing Dante in their kitchen. For a second, Isabella feared another meltdown. But Emma's face lit up. She made a small sound, almost a word, and walked straight to him. Dante knelt, immediately. Bad day, he said quietly. Not a question. Emma nodded, pointed to her ears. Too loud. I understand. I brought something. He showed her the weighted blanket. It's heavy. Pressure might help. Emma touched the blanket, felt the weight, and something in her posture relaxed. She took it, wrapped it around herself like a cape, and for the first time since the fire alarm, her shoulders dropped from around her ears. Dante caught Isabella's eye, saw the tears streaming down her face. "She's okay," he said softly. "She just needed time and pressure, and to know she's safe." "How did you know?" Isabella's voice broke. "About the blanket, the weight." "Because I have one, at home. I use it every night." He paused. "Sensory seeking. Deep pressure helps regulate the nervous system. It's science, not magic. Just finding the tools that help." Emma crawled into Dante's lap, just climbed right up, wrapped in her new blanket, and pressed her face into his chest. Seeking pressure. Seeking calm, and Dante held her, naturally, like he'd done it 1,000 times. Isabella watched them, this dangerous man and her traumatized niece, and something broke open in her chest, something terrified and hopeful and too big to name. "Stay," she heard herself say. "Tonight, stay with us. Just be here, please." Dante looked at her over Emma's head. "Are you sure?" "No, but I'm asking anyway." He stayed. Emma fell asleep in his arms, weighted blanket cocooning her, and he carried her to bed. Tucked her in with a gentleness that made Isabella's throat ache. Arranged whisper beside her pillow, turned on the star nightlight. And when he came back to the living room, Isabella was sitting on the couch, finally crying properly. Loudly. Messily. All the fear and exhaustion and overwhelm pouring out. Dante sat beside her. Didn't touch her. Didn't speak. Just sat there while she broke. "I can't lose her," Isabella sobbed. "If David gets custody, if he takes her, I can't. Dante, I can't. You won't." His voice was absolute. "Rebecca will build a case. We'll prove he's unfit. We'll show the court that taking Emma from you would be devastating. We'll win. But what if we don't?" She turned to him, desperate. "What if the court decides biology matters more than love? What if they give her to him?" Dante's jaw tightened. "Then we go to Plan B." "What's Plan B?" "You disappear. Both of you. New names, new city, new lives. I have connections, resources. I can make you vanish so completely that no court order will ever find you." Isabella stared at him. "You'd do that? Help us run?" Without hesitation. He looked at her fully, and the fierce protectiveness in his eyes stole her breath. "I told you, Isabella. I have lines. Children are one. Emma is under my protection now. And that means no one, not David, not the courts, not God himself, takes her somewhere she'll be hurt, not while I'm alive to prevent it. Why?" The question tore out of her. "Why do you care so much? She's not, your child. I'm not. We're nothing to you. We're just people you met in a restaurant 5 weeks ago. Why would you risk everything for us?" Dante was quiet for a long time. When he spoke, his voice was rough. "When I was 8 years old, I watched my father beat my mother until she stopped moving. I was hiding in a closet, too scared to help, too small to fight. I watched her die, and I did nothing." Isabella's hand flew to her mouth. "The police came eventually. My father went to prison. I went to foster care. And I promised myself that if I ever had power, real power, I would use it to protect people who couldn't protect themselves, children especially, because I knew what it felt like to be helpless." His dark eyes held hers. "Emma isn't helpless. She has you. But you're fighting alone, and you shouldn't have to. So I'm fighting with you. That's why." Isabella didn't think, didn't question. She just moved forward and wrapped her arms around him. Dante went rigid. For 3 heartbeats, he didn't move. Then Slowly, carefully, his arms came around her. They held each other in the dark living room, while Emma slept safely in the next room, while the weight of everything pressed down around them. And Isabella understood. This wasn't about debt or obligation or even kindness. This was recognition. Two survivors who'd found each other. Two people who understood what it meant to fight for someone who couldn't fight for themselves. "Thank you," she whispered into his shoulder. "For staying, for helping, for everything." "Don't thank me yet," Dante said quietly. "This fight is just beginning, and it's going to get worse before it gets better." He was right. 2 weeks later, David showed up at Emma's school. The call came during Isabella's planning period. School secretary, voice tight with barely controlled panic. "Ms. Moreno, there's a situation. Emma's classroom. You need to come now." Isabella ran, down 2 hallways, past startled students, her heart hammering against her ribs. She burst through Emma's classroom door and stopped cold. A man stood at the front of the room. 32, maybe 33. Thin in a way that suggested recent weight loss. Dark circles under bloodshot eyes. Jeans hanging loose on narrow hips. Hands shoved in a stained jacket. David Reeves. And Emma. Emma was pressed into the corner behind Mrs. Chen's desk, hands clamped over her ears, eyes squeezed shut, rocking violently. Whisper lay abandoned on the floor 3 feet away. She'd dropped him, something she never did, and the high, keening sound coming from her throat made Isabella's chest constrict. "Just want to see my daughter," David was saying to Mrs. Chen, who stood between him and Emma like a 5-foot barrier of protective fury. "That's not a crime. I got rights. You need to leave." Mrs. Chen's voice was steel. "Now, before I call security. I'm her father. You're no one to her." Isabella's voice cut across the room. Every head turned. "You left. You abandoned her. You don't get to walk in here and traumatize her because you suddenly remembered she exists." David's gaze swung to Isabella, and she saw recognition flicker in his bloodshot eyes. "Isabella, Carmen's sister. Look at you playing mommy." His smile was ugly. "Where's Carmen? She too high to come herself?" "Carmen's dead." The words came out flat. "She's been dead for 18 months. Overdose. You would know that if you'd bothered to check on your daughter even once in 3 years." Something flickered across David's face. Not grief, calculation. "Well then, guess Emma needs her daddy more than ever." He took a step toward Emma's corner. "Come here, baby girl. Don't you remember me?" Emma's keening got louder. She pressed harder into the corner, making herself as small as possible. "Stop." Isabella moved between David and Emma, mirroring Mrs. Chen's protective stance. "Look at her. She's terrified. You're hurting her." "I'm her father. I got a right to see her. My lawyer says—" "Your lawyer is building a case for custody based on lies." Isabella's voice shook, but held firm. "You don't want Emma. You want her disability check. But that's not going to happen. Because I have a lawyer too. And we're going to prove exactly what you are." David's expression darkened. He took another step forward, and Isabella caught the smell. Stale cigarettes and something chemical. Her stomach turned. "You think you can keep me from my own kid?" His voice dropped, turned threatening. "You think some fancy lawyer is going to change the fact that I'm blood and you're not?" Courts favor biological parents, Isabella. Everyone knows that. Emma's coming home with me eventually. You're just delaying the inevitable. The only place you're going is out of this building. The new voice came from the doorway. Deep, quiet, absolutely cold. Dante. He stood in the doorway in a dark suit, looking every inch the dangerous man he was. Marco flanked him on one side, another man Isabella didn't recognize, on the other. David turned, and Isabella watched his face go from angry to uncertain. Some instinct, the kind developed from years of dealing with dangerous people, was telling him to be careful. "Who the hell are you?" David demanded, trying to sound tough and failing. "Someone who doesn't want to be here." Dante walked into the room with measured steps. Not fast, not aggressive, just inevitable. "But here I am anyway because you're making a 5-year-old child scream with fear." He stopped 10 feet from David, close enough to be threatening, far enough to be controlled. "Leave, now." "This is none of your business. Emma is my business. Isabella is my business. And you," Dante's gaze raked over David with contempt, "are a problem I'm about to solve unless you walk out that door in the next 10 seconds. David tried to hold his ground, tried to look unafraid. But Isabella could see the way his hands trembled, the way he glanced toward the door, calculating his chances. "I got rights," David said, but the bravado was cracking. "Legal rights. You can't." 8 seconds. "My lawyer." 6 seconds. David looked at Isabella, and something mean flashed in his eyes. "This isn't over. I'm getting my daughter back. And when I do, you'll never see her again." 3 seconds. David bolted, pushed past Marco and out the door, his footsteps echoing down the hallway. The room fell silent except for Emma's continued keening. Dante looked at Mrs. Chen. Did he touch her? No. Didn't get close, but he scared her badly. Dante nodded once, then turned to Isabella. "Get Emma. Take her home. Marco will drive you. There's procedures. I need to file a report. Already done. Security footage has been saved. Statements are being taken. School is filing a restraining order." His dark eyes held hers. "Take Emma home. Make her feel safe. That's what she needs right now." Isabella wanted to argue, wanted to handle everything herself the way she always did. But Emma was still, rocking, still crying, and she needed her aunt more than Isabella's pride needed protecting. "Okay," she whispered. It took 20 minutes to calm Emma enough to move her, another 10 to get her to the car. She wouldn't let go of Isabella, wouldn't stop shaking, and when they finally got home, she vomited from the stress. Isabella held her while she was sick, cleaned her up, changed her into soft pajamas, wrapped her in the weighted blanket Dante had brought. And when Emma finally fell into exhausted sleep, Isabella sat on the bathroom floor and let herself fall apart. Her phone buzzed. Text from Dante. "How is she?" "Sleeping. Finally." "And you?" Isabella stared at the question. No one asked her that. No one wondered how she was holding up. Everyone assumed teachers were invincible, that aunts who became mothers overnight were made of steel. "Not okay," she typed, then deleted it. Typed, "Fine. Don't lie to me, Isabella." She laughed. It came out broken. "I'm terrified. He found her school. He saw her. He knows where we are. And he's not going to stop until—" She couldn't finish the sentence, couldn't type the words that would make the fear real. Her phone rang. "Dante." "Talk to me," he said when she answered. "I don't know what to say." "Then listen." His voice was calm, steady, an anchor in her spinning world. David violated protocol by showing up at Emma's school. Security footage shows him aggressive and threatening. The school is filing a restraining order. Rebecca is using this incident to strengthen our case. It proves he's unstable, that he prioritizes his wants over Emma's well-being. But what if he comes back? He won't. I've made sure of that. Isabella's blood went cold. "What did you do?" "Nothing illegal, nothing violent. I simply had a conversation with him. Explained very clearly that if he comes near Emma again before the custody hearing, if he violates the restraining order, if he so much as drives past your apartment, there will be consequences. Legal ones that his lawyer won't be able to fix. What kind of consequences? The kind that come from having every illegal thing he's done in the past 5 years suddenly become very interesting to law enforcement. Dante paused. I'm not threatening to hurt him, Isabella. I'm threatening to expose him. There's a difference. You investigated him. Thoroughly. David Reeves has been dealing again. Small amounts, but consistent. He's also been receiving money from a loan shark named Vincent. Torino, that's who's funding his custody lawyer. Torino sees Emma as an income stream. Get custody, collect the disability checks, use David as a front. Isabella felt sick. So this isn't even about Emma, she's just a commodity. Yes. Dante's voice hardened. But Rebecca knows now. She's building a case that shows the financial motivation, shows David's continued drug involvement, shows that giving him custody would put Emma in direct danger. Will it be enough? It will be enough, Dante said. I promise you, Isabella. Emma is not going to David Reeves. Not while I'm breathing. Isabella closed her eyes, let his certainty wrap around her like armor. Thank you. For today. For being there. For everything. I'll always be there, Dante said quietly. When Emma needs me, when you need me, that's not changing. Why? The question came out small. I still don't understand why you care this much. Because she drew me a smile, Dante said simply. Because she took my hand. Because she's 5 years old and autistic and traumatized, and the world wants to fail her. And I'm not letting that happen. He paused. And because somewhere along the way, you and Emma stopped being strangers I was helping and became something else. Isabella's breath caught. What else? I don't have a word for it yet. But I know what it feels like. His voice dropped, went rough. It feels like coming home. Tears spilled down Isabella's cheeks. Dante, go check on Emma. Make sure she's really sleeping. And lock your doors. I have someone watching your building tonight, just in case. You don't have to. I do, because the thought of anything happening to either of you makes me want to burn the world down. So let me do this. Let me keep you safe. Okay, she whispered. Okay. After they hung up, Isabella sat in the dark bathroom for a long time, her phone pressed to her chest, feeling the echo of his words. It feels like coming home. And she realized with terrifying clarity that she felt the same way. The restraining order came through in 3 days. David was forbidden from coming within 500 feet of Emma, her school, or their apartment. Security footage from the school incident had been damning. You could see Emma's terror clearly, see David's aggression, see him advancing despite being told to stop. Rebecca called it a gift. This shifts everything. Now we're not just arguing about fitness, we're arguing about safety. The court will take that seriously. But the custody hearing was still 2 months away. 2 months of living with the fear that David would violate the order, that he'd show up at the park, or the grocery store, or outside their building. 2 months of looking over her shoulder. Dante understood without being told. He didn't offer to hurt David. He'd learned that boundary. Instead, he offered presence. He showed up at Emma's school every afternoon, walking Isabella and Emma to Marco's car. He came to their apartment 3 nights a week, bringing dinner and staying until Emma fell asleep. He was at the park every Saturday, exactly at 9:30. He became part of their routine, part of their structure, part of their safety. And somewhere in those weeks, Isabella stopped being afraid of him and started being afraid of how much she needed him. It was a Wednesday evening in mid-December when everything shifted. Emma was having a good day. She'd spoken 2 words at school, blue crayon, and her teacher had called to share the yao. Victory. Isabella had celebrated by making Emma's favorite dinner, plain pasta with butter and exactly 9 baby carrots. Dante arrived at 6:30 with a small box. "What's that?" Isabella asked, letting him in. "A gift, for Emma, if that's okay." Emma appeared from her room, saw Dante, and ran to him. He knelt, always brought himself to her level, and let her hug him. Over the past weeks, Emma had become comfortable with physical touch with Dante. Not everyone, just him and Isabella. But that was progress. "I brought you something," Dante said quietly, holding out the box. Emma took it carefully, opened it. Inside was a small keyboard, not a toy, but a real digital keyboard with weighted keys and a headphone jack. "Remember how we talked about music?" Dante asked. "How it helps organize your thoughts. I thought you might like to try creating sounds." Emma's eyes went huge. She pulled the keyboard from the box, set it on the coffee table, and pressed a key. Middle C rang out clear and pure. She pressed another, and another. Not a melody, just exploration, discovering what each key did, what sounds they made. Isabella watched tears blur her vision. "Dante, this is too much." "It's not enough," he said, standing. "Nothing I give her will ever be enough compared to what she's given me." "What has she given you?" Dante looked at Emma, now pressing keys in patterns, testing sequences. "Permission to be myself. She doesn't need me to mask, doesn't need me to perform neurotypical. I can just be, and that's—" His voice caught. "That's a gift I didn't know I needed." Isabella understood. She saw it every time Dante stimmed without apology, the way he'd tap his fingers in patterns, or rock slightly when he was thinking, the way he'd sometimes need 5 minutes of silence after social interaction, the way he ate the same lunch every day, turkey sandwich, plain chips, black coffee. Because routine was regulation. He was letting them see him, the real him, the one beneath the mask. "Stay for dinner," Isabella said. Not a question, an invitation. "I'd like that." They ate at the small kitchen table. Pasta and carrots for Emma, leftover Thai for the adults. Emma sat with the keyboard beside her, occasionally pressing keys between bites. The sounds became part of the meal's rhythm. "Rebecca called today," Isabella said quietly. "The investigation turned up something." Dante looked up, immediately focused. "What?" "David failed 2 drug tests. His employer, a construction company, fired him last week. And Vincent Torino, the loan shark funding the lawyer, he's under federal investigation, RICO violations. Which means Rebecca can argue that David's entire custody petition is backed by organized crime. That giving Emma to him would put her in proximity to criminal activity." Isabella set down her fork. "She thinks we might win. Actually win." "You will win," Dante said with certainty. "David's case is falling apart. He has no legitimate income, failed drug tests, and financial backing from a criminal. No judge will give him custody. But what if they give him visitation? What if they say he has a right to see her even if he can't have full custody? Then we appeal. We fight. We keep fighting until Emma is legally, permanently safe." He reached across the table, covered her hand with his. "You're not doing this alone, Isabella. You never have to do this alone again." His hand was warm, solid, real. Isabella looked down at their joined hands and felt something enormous swell in her chest. "I don't know what I'd do without you," she whispered. "You'd survive. You'd find a way. That's what you do." His thumb brushed across her knuckles. "But you don't have to anymore. I'm here. I'm staying here." Emma made a sound, almost a laugh. They both looked over. She'd figured out how to play a simple pattern. 3 notes ascending, 2 notes descending. The same pattern Isabella hummed to soothe her. Emma was playing their song. "She remembers," Isabella breathed. "She's playing your song," Dante finished. "The one you hummed to her." Emma played it again, then looked at Dante, pointed to the keys. "You want me to try?" he asked. She nodded. Dante moved to sit beside her on the floor. Emma showed him the keys. C, D, E, then back to D, C. He repeated the pattern. Then she showed him something else. A harmony. And together, they played. Isabella stood in the kitchen doorway, tears streaming down her face, watching a Mafia consigliere and her autistic niece create music together on the floor of their tiny apartment. This was everything she'd never dared to hope for. Family, connection, safety, love. The word hit her like lightning. Love. She loved him. God help her. She loved Dante Marchetti. Later, after Emma was asleep, they sat on the couch in comfortable silence, close but not touching. The keyboard sat on the coffee table, Emma's fingerprints smudged on the keys. "I should tell you something," Dante said finally, "about what happened at your school the day David showed up." Isabella turned to face him. "What about it?" "You asked me not to hurt him, and I haven't. I won't. But I need you to understand." He paused, jaw tight. "It took everything in me not to. When I saw Emma crying, saw you standing between her and him like you could physically stop him if he tried to take her. Something in me wanted to end him right there. But you didn't. Because you asked me not to. Because Emma doesn't need blood on her hands. Because you were right. There's a better way." His dark eyes met hers. "But it cost me, Isabella. Fighting that instinct. That's who I am. That's what I do when people I care about are threatened. I make threats disappear." "I know who you are," Isabella said quietly. "I've known for weeks. You're dangerous. You're connected to violence. You've probably done terrible things." She reached out, touched his face. "But you're also the man who kneels on floors for a 5-year-old, who brings weighted blankets and keyboards, who honors boundaries even when it hurts. That's who you are too." "Those things can't coexist forever," Dante said. "Eventually you'll have to choose. Me or safety, me or Emma's innocence, me or—" "You," Isabella said firmly. "I choose you. We choose you, Emma and me, because you're not separate from our safety. You are our safety, and I trust you, completely." Dante's breath caught. "Isabella, I love you," she said. The words felt huge and terrifying and absolutely right. "I love you, and I know it's fast, and I know it's complicated, but I don't care. You've become essential, to both of us, and I need you to know that." For a long moment, Dante just stared at her. Then he moved, pulled her against him, wrapped his arms around her, and held on like she was the only solid thing in a spinning world. "I love you too," he said into her hair. "I've loved you since Emma drew me that first smile. Since you stood in that restaurant and apologized for existing. Since you let me into your world despite knowing exactly what I am." He pulled back to look at her. "You're the first person who's ever seen all of me and stayed." Isabella kissed him, soft and brief and full of promise. "I'm not going anywhere," she whispered. "Neither am I." They held each other while snow began to fall outside, while Emma slept safely down the hall, while the future, uncertain but together, waited for them. 2 days later, Rebecca called with news that changed everything. Vincent Torina was arrested on a Tuesday morning. Federal agents, RICO charges, conspiracy, money laundering, the kind of charges that came with decades in prison. Rebecca called Isabella an hour later, her voice bright with victory. David's lawyer withdrew from the case this morning. Without Torino's funding, he can't afford representation. And get this. When federal agents searched Torino's records, they found documentation of the entire scheme, using Emma's disability benefits as collateral for loans. Plans to use David as a front while Torino collected the checks. It's all there. In writing. Isabella's legs went weak. She sat down hard on the couch. So what does this mean? It means we have everything we need. David's lawyer is gone. His case is exposed as fraudulent. He failed drug tests, lost his job, and now there's federal documentation proving his custody petition was part of a criminal conspiracy. Rebecca's smile was audible through the phone. The hearing is in 2 days, but Isabella, this isn't a hearing anymore. This is a formality. You've already won. The courtroom was smaller than Isabella expected. Judge Patricia Morrison presided, 60-something, gray hair, sharp eyes that missed nothing. David sat at the defendant's table alone. No lawyer. He'd lost weight. Looked smaller. Defeated. Isabella sat at the plaintiff's table with Rebecca and Dante. She'd argued against Dante coming. This was family court, not his world. But he'd been immovable. Emma is my family now, he'd said. I'm coming. So he sat beside her, perfectly still, his presence an anchor. Judge Morrison reviewed the case files, the drug tests, the employment termination, the federal investigation documentation, David's 3-year abandonment, Emma's autism diagnosis, the school incident, the restraining order violation that happened 2 weeks ago when David drove past their apartment, captured on security cameras Dante had installed. Mr. Reeves, Judge Morrison said finally, you've had multiple opportunities to demonstrate fitness as a parent. You've failed at every turn. Your petition for custody appears to have been motivated not by paternal love, but by financial gain through criminal conspiracy. David opened his mouth to protest. The judge held up a hand. I've reviewed Ms. Moreno's petition for permanent guardianship. She has provided Emma with stability, specialized care, and a loving home for 18 months. The child's medical and educational records show significant progress under her care. Judge Morrison looked at Isabella. Ms. Moreno, you're asking for permanent legal guardianship with the right to adopt. Is that correct? Yes, Your Honor. Isabella's voice shook but held. And you have the means to support Emma long-term? Rebecca stood. Your Honor, Ms. Moreno is employed full-time as a special education teacher. She also has financial support through a private trust established specifically for Emma's care. She handed documents to the bailiff. The trust covers all medical expenses, therapeutic services, and educational needs. It's irrevocable and managed by an independent trustee. Isabella blinked. Trust. She hadn't known about any trust. Dante's hand found hers under the table. Squeezed once. She understood. This was him, ensuring Emma would be cared for, making sure money could never be a factor in custody again. Judge Morrison reviewed the trust documents. Nodded slowly. Mr. Reeves, do you have anything to say before I issue my ruling? David stood. For a moment, Isabella thought he might fight, might make one last desperate argument. But he just looked at her, really looked at her, and something human flickered in his bloodshot eyes. She's better off with you, he said quietly. Emma, I know that. I've always known that. He paused. I'm sorry. For all of it. For failing Carmen. For failing Emma. For being the kind of man who'd use his own kid as a paycheck. His voice cracked. I'm sorry. It might have been the first honest thing he'd ever said to her. Judge Morrison's gavel came down. Permanent legal guardianship is granted to Isabella Moreno. Mr. Reeves's parental rights are hereby terminated. Ms. Moreno, you may proceed with adoption whenever you're ready. The court finds this arrangement to be in the child's best interest. She looked at David. Mr. Reeves, you're prohibited from contacting Emma until she's 18 and chooses to contact you. Violation will result in criminal charges. Am I understood? Yes, Your Honor. Another strike of the gavel. This court is adjourned. It was over. Just like that. 18 months of fear, weeks of legal battle, years of trauma. Over. Isabella stood on shaking legs. Rebecca was hugging her, saying congratulations. David was leaving through the side door, head down, shoulders bent. And Dante was crying, silently, tears sliding down his face while he stared at the judge's bench like he'd witnessed a miracle. Dante? Isabella touched his arm. He looked at her, and the raw emotion in his eyes stole her breath. She's safe, he whispered. Emma's safe. He can't touch her. No one can take her from you. She's safe. And Isabella understood. This wasn't just about Emma. This was about the child Dante had been. The one who couldn't protect his mother. The one who'd spent 40 years carrying guilt for something that was never his fault. This was redemption. She pulled him into her arms, and they held each other in the empty courtroom, while Rebecca discreetly stepped outside to give them privacy. Thank you, Isabella whispered, for everything, for fighting with me, for believing we could win, for loving her, for loving us. Always, Dante said into her hair. I will always fight for you, both of you. That's not changing. I know, she said. I know. 6 months later, on a bright Saturday morning in June, Isabella stood in the doorway of Dante's brownstone in Brooklyn Heights and listened to music. Not just any music. Emma's music. The piano room had been Dante's office before. Dark wood, leather chairs, a place for conducting business. Now it was painted soft lavender, Emma's choice. The grand piano sat by the window where natural light streamed in. And at the piano, sitting on the bench beside Dante, Emma played. Her hands moved across the keys with growing confidence. The melody was simple, Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star, but she played it perfectly. Counted the beats, hit every note. And when she finished, she looked up at Dante with a smile, a real smile, not drawn, actually on her face. Beautiful, Dante said. Again? Or do you want to try the new song? New song, Emma said. Her voice was still quiet, still hesitant. But it was there. Words. Sentences. Progress. Dante opened the sheet music. This one is called Morning. It's about how the sun comes up and everything feels new, like a beginning. Emma studied the notes, placed her hands on the keys, started to play. Isabella watched from the doorway, her heart so full it hurt. This was the life they'd built. Emma in weekly piano lessons with Dante, speech therapy twice a week, occupational therapy, a new IEP with goals Emma was actually meeting, a small circle of friends at school who understood her needs, and Dante. Dante, who'd moved them into his brownstone 4 months ago, who'd converted the 3rd floor into Emma's perfect space, soft lighting, soundproofing, a corner for her, keyboard and art supplies, who read her stories every night, who understood her meltdowns and knew exactly how to help, who'd asked Isabella to marry him 3 weeks ago with a simple question. Will you let me be Emma's father officially? She'd said yes. The wedding was planned for September, small, private, just them and the people who mattered. Emma finished mourning and turned to Dante. Good? Perfect, he said. You're a natural, Piccola. Your musical processing is incredibly strong. Like you, Emma said. Dante's expression went soft. Yes, like me. We both hear the world in patterns, in rhythms. That's our superpower. Emma considered this. Then, Isabella's superpower is love. She loves so much it makes people safe. Isabella's breath caught. Those were the most words Emma had strung together in months. Dante looked at Isabella in the doorway. Their eyes met, and everything they'd survived, everything they'd fought for, everything they'd become, lived in that look. "She's right," Dante said softly. "Love makes people safe. When it's the right kind of love, the kind that sees you completely and stays anyway." "Story time?" Emma asked, closing the sheet music carefully. "After lunch," Dante said. "What do you want to eat?" "Pasta. 9 carrots. 9 carrots it is." Emma ran past Isabella toward the kitchen, and Isabella caught her for a quick hug, pressed a kiss to her curls, let her go. Dante stood, crossed to Isabella, pulled her against him. "She played beautifully today." "She did. You're a good teacher. She's a good student, motivated, focused when she's interested." He paused. "She asked me something yesterday, when you were at the store." "What?" "If she could call me Dad, after the wedding, if that would be okay." Tears flooded Isabella's eyes. "What did you say?" "I said I'd be honored, that I've thought of myself as her father for months now. That love makes a family, not biology." His voice went rough. "Then I cried for 20 minutes, in the bathroom, because I couldn't believe this was real." Isabella laughed through her tears. "It's real. We're real. This family we built, it's real." "I know." He kissed her forehead. "I know. But sometimes I still can't believe it. That I get this. That I get you both." "You don't get us," Isabella said. "We're not possessions you won or earned. We chose you. That's different. That's better." "We chose each other," Dante corrected. "Yes," Isabella agreed. "We did." From the kitchen, Emma called, "Out." "Dante! Isabella! I'm hungry!" "Coming," they answered together. And they walked toward the kitchen, toward Emma, toward lunch, toward the ordinary, beautiful moments that made a life, hand in hand. Together. Sometimes the people who understand us best aren't the ones who knew us longest. They're the ones who recognize something in us that even we didn't know was there. The ones who see our differences not as flaws, but as different ways of being whole. Isabella thought she was alone in the world, carrying impossible weight with no help. Emma thought she was broken, too different to ever truly belong, and Dante thought he was too damaged, too dangerous, too wrong to ever deserve softness. They were all mistaken. Because family isn't about being perfect. It's about being seen. It's about someone kneeling down to your level, literally or figuratively, and saying, "I understand. You're not alone. I've got you." And maybe that's what all of us need. Not someone to fix us, just someone willing to sit in the quiet with us until the world feels manageable again. Someone who doesn't need us to translate ourselves. Someone who speaks our language, even if that language is silence or music or purple crayon smiles drawn on notepaper. Love isn't always loud. Sometimes it's quiet understanding. Sometimes it's weighted blankets and piano lessons. Sometimes it's showing up, again and again, until showing up becomes coming home. If this story reminded you what's possible when people choose each other, we'd love to hear from you in the comments. Tell us what spoke to your heart. Hit like to support stories about found families and unexpected redemption, and subscribe to Forgotten Files. We bring you new emotional journeys every single day. Before you leave, check out our playlist for more stories about love that saves, families that choose each other, and second chances that change everything. Thank you for being here with us today. Thank you for believing that broken people can build beautiful things together. Until next time, stay safe, stay open, and remember, understanding is the rarest gift we can give each other. And sometimes, the person who needs it most is standing right in front of us. Good night.